Welcome to Deep Psyche. Sometimes it's not the room that changes, it's you, and you feel it. Not with your mind, but with something older, deeper. The silence sharpens when you arrive. The atmosphere tightens, as if something invisible just stepped into focus. This isn't social awkwardness. It's not anxiety. It's a signal, a quiet echo from the self, stirring beneath the surface. When your energy begins to individuate, when your soul steps closer to its original shape, reality around you responds. People don't always know what they're sensing, but they sense it because your presence disturbs the collective mask. And that kind of authenticity bends time, breaks patterns, and exposes what's hidden. In this video, we'll explore 11 signs you might be vibrating beyond the ordinary. Not because you try, but because you are. So if you've ever felt strange in familiar places, or noticed the world shift slightly when you enter the room, stay with me, because the very thing that makes you feel different might just be your soul remembering who it is. You walk into a room and something subtle shifts. No one needs to turn their head. No one needs to hear your voice. And yet you've been felt. There's a resonance that arrives before the body, a silent signal that precedes words, gestures, or even eye contact. This is vibrational reality. Carl Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." True alignment doesn't glitter, it grounds. And when someone begins to align from within, the energy around them rearranges. Everything in the universe vibrates, but only a few carry a frequency shaped by self-awareness, shadow work, and truth. Most people move through life in fragments, scattered thoughts, unprocessed emotions, borrowed behaviors. You can feel it when someone is still hiding behind their own masks. Their presence is dissonant. Something doesn't quite add up. They speak with their words, but their energy tells another story. But when a person begins to live in coherence, when the inner world harmonizes with the archetypal self, the organizing center of the psyche, something changes. They don't demand attention, but the room notices anyway. Their presence is clear, grounded, undeniable. Your energy speaks before you do. People feel it. They don't always know why, only that something about you is different. It's as if your very being whispers, "I am real," and that quiet truth stirs something in the environment. Sometimes gently, sometimes uncomfortably, but never indifferently. This is often the first thing highly vibrational people experience. The field responds. The space subtly reorganizes itself, not because you're trying, but because you're in tune with what is real. It's not charisma. It's not strategy. It's alignment. Carl Jung spoke of the symbolic power that radiates from the self and how the collective unconscious recognizes that energy, responding in ways beyond logic or intention. This is not about superiority. It's about responsibility. Because what you carry, whether it is truth, wholeness, or presence, vibrates outward and begins to order the silent chaos in others. At first, it can feel strange, like judgment, like discomfort, but it's simply resonance. Your energy is communicating with what's unspoken. So even in silence, you're already in dialogue. And then comes the second experience. Masks begin to fall. You're just there still, present, real. And without effort, the people around you begin to soften. They open, because something in them senses it's finally safe to be seen. It begins subtly, a shift in tone, a longer pause, a quiet confession that wasn't meant to surface, but does. Suddenly the conversation deepens, not because you asked for it, but because your presence doesn't make space for the false. Highly vibrational people carry a quiet kind of integrity, and integrity by its very nature is gravitational. It draws authenticity closer and makes performance unravel. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society. A necessary illusion, crafted for approval, belonging, survival. But near someone who is whole, the mask begins to slip. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. And often, without understanding why, someone will say, "I don't know why I'm telling you this. I've never said this to anyone before. It's not that you're digging for truth. Truth simply finds you, as if it senses that around you it's safe to breathe, because you don't perform. And that invites others to stop performing too. You don't demand vulnerability, you allow it. You hold a space that has made peace with its own shadows, and so others feel, even unconsciously, that they can do the same. Truth relaxes in your presence, even if just for a moment, even if it vanishes again after it's spoken, because the field doesn't lie. And what is true always looks for a way out. Then something else begins to happen, something even less logical, but more instinctive. Children notice. They look at you longer than usual, some smile, others draw near, unafraid. They sit beside you, brush against your arm, fall quiet, as if they're studying you or remembering you. And animals, they respond even more clearly. The anxious dog settles down. The aloof cat suddenly curls up near your feet, like they've found a pocket of peace in the world. Because nature, untainted by persona, recognizes coherence. It doesn't need explanation. It trusts wholeness on sight. Jung often wrote that the unconscious understands symbols without interpretation. Children and animals live closer to that realm. They don't analyze, they don't pretend. They feel, and when they feel you, they sense something rare, a human being who is not divided against themselves. And to them, that feels like home. The third thing highly vibrational people experience is exactly this: a natural magnetism from the most sensitive beings toward what's real. You don't need to say the right words. You don't need to perform. What matters is what you are. Because when your energy is clear, centered, free from inner static, it broadcasts something that doesn't need translation. Children and animals don't care about your accomplishments, your eloquence, or how nice you seem. They tune into something deeper, your presence. They want to know, is it safe here? Is it real? And when it is, they trust, instantly. This connection, though often quiet and unspoken, reveals something profound. When the soul begins to align with the self, it emits a frequency that speaks directly to instinct. It isn't a gift you were born with. It's something built, often through pain, through fragmentation, and only those who've walked through their own ruins understand what it means to carry truth in their vibration. The response is always the same: closeness, curiosity, peace. These silent encounters speak volumes. They say your energy belongs to nature, and that kind of coherence can't be faked. It can only be felt. Then comes the fourth experience, one that often confuses those who rely solely on logic. It's intuition, not as a vague hunch, but as a deeper knowing that precedes thought. You enter a room, and you already sense what isn't being said. Someone smiles, but your body picks up the tension behind their eyes. Everything looks fine on the surface, but you feel what lies beneath. Jung called this process active imagination, a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, a language of symbols, impressions, and emotions that bypasses reason. When someone begins to live from the self, this symbolic perception sharpens. You don't analyze it, you receive it. It arrives through the body, a flicker in your gut, a sudden stillness, goosebumps, an unshakable calm, or an unexplained resistance. Your body becomes a compass. It doesn't point to ideas, it points to truth. You walk into a space and intuitively know where there's authenticity, where there's performance, where there's tension, where there's invitation. It's not paranoia, and it's not fantasy. It's perception before the mind gets involved. And if you doubt it, if you dismiss it, the soul lets you know. It whispers through restlessness, that subtle inner heaviness when you override what you already sensed. Intuition doesn't argue, it directs. It doesn't explain itself. It simply shows you through symbols, sensations, silence. And those who live with higher presence begin to trust this inner language. Not because it sounds mystical, but because it proves itself over and over again. Eventually, you stop needing to predict the future. You realize it's not about control, it's about protecting your truth. Because the self doesn't shout, It speaks in frequencies. And when you begin listening with your whole being, your life shifts, not just in events, but in vibration. The fifth shift is subtle, but profound. It begins from within. When your vibration rises, the old inner oppositions soften. Firmness and kindness no longer clash. Strength no longer needs to be hard. Sensitivity no longer feels like a weakness. You realize these were never enemies, just energies awaiting integration. Carl Jung spoke of the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine forces within the psyche. As individuation deepens, these polarities stop pulling apart. They begin to dance, to dialogue, to harmonize. You start acting with feeling, listening with purpose, deciding with care. Clarity emerges not from logic alone, but from wholeness. You're no longer split inside. There's coherence, and it touches everything: your speech, your choices, your presence. This integration isn't about gender, it's energetic. Animus builds, animates, directs. Anima receives, nurtures, intuits. When these principles are reconciled, something inside you aligns. You stop searching for completion in others. You stop replaying inherited patterns. You stop outsourcing your missing parts. Those who haven't made this inner journey often project. They seek outward what they haven't met within. But when you've done the work, when you've faced imbalance and taken ownership, you carry a quiet steadiness. Not perfection, but rootedness. It doesn't make you immune to emotion or doubt, but it anchors you. You can be soft and sharp, gentle and strong, and people feel that balance, even if they can't name it, because a whole person doesn't need to prove anything. They're not performing, they're not at war inside, and so their energy stops resisting the world. But with this comes a new sensitivity. Shallow spaces begin to drain you. Conversations without depth become tiring. You smile, but it costs you. Your presence no longer fits where authenticity is absent. It's not pride, not detachment, just resonance. And when something no longer resonates, your soul quietly withdraws. The sixth shift is inevitable. Superficiality begins to drain you. As your vibration rises, the false becomes heavier. You feel it in your body, your breath, your bones. Scripted conversations feel hollow. Laughter that isn't real echoes strangely. Spaces where silence is feared become unbearable. You used to bend to fit in. Now your energy quietly says no. Carl Jung described individuation as a journey toward wholeness, a peeling away of what does not resonate with the soul. And that process begins to move on its own. You don't force separation. You simply start to drift from what no longer feeds you. Not out of arrogance, but preservation. Your nature softens, but your field sharpens. You may still be kind, open, polite, but not available. Not where there's no real presence. Something in you refuses to pretend. Because being around surface-level noise while living from depth feels like breathing out of rhythm with the world. It's not that you need intense conversations all the time, but you need something true, even if it's quiet, even if it's a shared stillness or a single glance filled with meaning. This is not a demand you place on others. It's a recognition from your soul. You welcome lightness, but only the kind that floats because it's free, not because it's hollow. And yes, this clarity reduces your crowd, but it expands your peace. In the silence left behind, you begin to hear yourself again. Another pattern begins to emerge. You walk into rooms, meet people, and something stirs. Not in you, but in them. A glance, a subtle tension, a strange resistance that doesn't quite match the moment. Then come the projections, the defensiveness, the quiet withdrawal. It's as if your presence turned a light on in a room they preferred to keep dark. You're not doing anything, you're simply being. But that alone becomes a mirror, a silent invitation to look inward. And not everyone is ready. The seventh thing that begins to happen is this. You see the shadow in others, and it doesn't shake you. Carl Jung taught that the shadow holds all we repress, reject, or forget. Our fears, our impulses, our pain, our anger. all the inconvenient truths we'd rather not face. And when you've faced your own, when you've sat in the dark with what you once ran from, listen to your inner chaos without turning away, something shifts. You carry light, but not a light that performs, a light that reveals. And that light, without effort, without intent, disturbs what others have hidden. You walk into a space, simply being, and the unconscious begins to stir. Not in you, in them. Some people retreat, others attack. Some lean in, then pull away as if they touched a truth too hot to hold. Because your presence doesn't flatter the persona, it calls the real self forward. And not everyone is ready for that. But here's the grace, you know. You see the discomfort for what it is. You don't take it personally. You recognize when criticism isn't yours to carry, when irritation is a projection, when the reaction says more about their unhealed places than your presence. And that gives you a quiet kind of freedom. You no longer shrink to soothe others' insecurities. You no longer dim to keep the peace. You understand the unconscious play, and you choose not to join the performance. You remain whole, not out of distance, but depth. Not from pride, but from a deeper energetic maturity. You're not responsible for the shadows your light reveals, but you're responsible for keeping your light clean. Some people enter a space and speed everything up. Their presence scatters. Conversations lose center. Time feels rushed and the energy grows thin. But others, when they arrive, slow the whole world down. Words grow weight. Silence feels sacred. Time stretches, and that's the difference. The eighth experience of highly vibrational individuals is this. They create a sense of timelessness. Their presence, quiet and rooted, begins to loosen the grip of urgency. The tempo of the world slows around them. The breath of others deepens, subtly, unconsciously. Not because they demand stillness, but because they are still. They no longer move from pressure. They move from presence. Carl Jung described the union between ego and self as a state of wholeness. And when this union begins to take shape, psychological time begins to dissolve. The kind of time that's bound to worry, to memory, to anticipation. You begin to inhabit the now, not as a concept, but as a state of being. And that state radiates. In your presence, others begin to hear themselves more clearly. They slow down, not because you ask them to, but because your presence reminds them what silence feels like. You don't impose calm, you hold it. And others feel it, like a stable current beneath rushing waters. To be this kind of presence requires inner stillness, a quiet mind, a heart not constantly pulled by distraction. It means you befriended your own emptiness, and that friendship becomes your center, the eye of your storm. People won't always know what it is. They just know they feel different when they're near you. Time stretches, conversations deepen, even silence becomes meaningful. They'll say things like, "I feel lighter when I'm around you." It's like the world pauses for a while. And it's true because truth moves at a different rhythm. It doesn't rush, it remains. And the ninth thing highly vibrational people experience is this. They're remembered, even in absence. You leave, and yet something of you stays. Not as a memory of words, but as a trace of presence. Your silence, your calm, your way of being, they linger. It isn't charm, it isn't charisma, it's coherence. Jung spoke of the self as a living symbolic force, a psychic center that, once accessed, begins to emit a kind of archetypal gravity. You start to carry meaning, not because you try to, but because your presence touches the unconscious in others. And what is real always leaves a mark. Your energy becomes a mirror, or a refuge, or both. Even if they don't understand it, they feel it. A resonance, a clarity, a space that revealed something in them. You may have said little, you may have stayed mostly in silence, but your wholeness did the speaking. Later, in moments of chaos, they remember you. In moments of doubt, a line you once said returns. In moments of quiet, your name, or what you represented, echoes. You passed by, but you remained. Because when the soul encounters coherence, it never forgets. That's what it means to leave an imprint, not on the timeline of memory, but on the landscape of being. And in a fragmented world, the presence of one who has come home to themselves becomes, for others, a path, a signal, a still point. Where vibrational integrity exists, so does a quiet, invisible permanence. The 10th thing that highly vibrational individuals inevitably experience is a very particular kind of misunderstanding. Because in a world that equates calm with compliance, inner stillness is often mistaken for passivity. But peace, real peace, is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of self within conflict. Highly vibrational people are often perceived as gentle, agreeable, undemanding. But that is a misreading. Their calm is not the calm of avoidance. It is the calm of clarity. They do not seek conflict, but neither do they evade it. They breathe through tension. They listen with presence. And when needed, they say no, not with aggression, but with unmistakable authority. Carl Jung spoke of the transcendent function, the psychic capacity to hold opposing forces without collapsing into either. This is what such individuals embody. They do not repress anger. They transmute it into direction. They do not escape discomfort. They navigate by it. And that unsettles people. How can someone so kind be so clear, so soft, and yet so immovable? The answer is simple. They are not at peace because they avoid the storm. They are at peace because they have walked through it and found their still point within. Their presence does not disappear in confrontation. It deepens. It does not escalate, but neither does it retreat. It remains, fully, unapologetically. This kind of peace does not need to dominate the room. It speaks in low tones and still reshapes the space. Such people do not fake smiles to maintain appearances. They do not trade truth for harmony. They do not betray themselves to avoid tension. They've learned that real alignment sometimes requires rupture, that healing often begins in the uncomfortable space where something breaks open. And they have become strong enough to stand in that space without flinching and without losing compassion. Their peace has a spine, and it knows how to stand. The final point on our list is not something visible, but something palpable, a silent presence that fills any room. It doesn't demand attention, it doesn't flash, yet everything around it notices. Highly vibrational people experience this. Their light is not the result of mere concepts or positivity slogans. It doesn't spring from endless affirmations or mantras. It's born from the depths, from pain, from the fall, from the dark night of the soul. The highest vibration today belongs to those who have sat in the depths and stayed there. They didn't rush through their darkness. They sat with their monsters. They wept for wounds they never allowed themselves to acknowledge. They let go of versions of themselves that once felt definitive. And still, they kept going. Carl Jung once said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Those who have walked this path understand this completely. You didn't arrive here by chance. You created yourself. Each layer of your presence holds the weight of something faced, something no longer denied. And that is why your energy feels so real, so dense, so deeply experienced. It doesn't arise from pretending to be okay. It comes from choosing to remain whole when life tried to break you. Your light is made from shadow passed through, honored scars and truths that stood firm when it would have been easier to escape. You saw yourself broken. You saw yourself fragile. You saw yourself lost. But instead of hiding from it, you leaned into it and discovered that true strength isn't found in avoiding the fall. It's found in returning with something new, something that only emerges for those who refuse to give up on themselves. That's why when you speak, people listen differently. When you're present, spaces adjust. When you touch, something deep within others is activated. Your light doesn't seek to be seen, it seeks to remind us. It reminds us that rebuilding is possible. It reminds us that we can rise again. High vibration is not a status. It's the harmonious alignment between soul, body, and emotion. And that kind of coherence cannot be bought or learned through formulas. It's the outcome of someone who has stopped living on autopilot and started truly existing. Those who vibrate highly are not always smiling, nor are they perpetually calm, but they are whole, and wholeness is rare. It's the result of facing what hurts, letting go of what no longer serves, and unlearning the lessons that taught us to hide. These individuals consciously choose to uphold their truth, even when it costs them relationships, spaces, and comfort. That energy, so often called strength or presence, is nothing more than the integration of thought, feeling, and lived experience. High vibration is not about being above others. It's about being at peace with all aspects of yourself. It's about knowing you carry shadows, but not being ruled by them. It's about having scars, but not turning them into armor. It's about staying open, even after everything. People who vibrate in this way shift the environment, not through power, but through genuine presence. They don't need to convince anyone. They don't need a stage nor applause. They exist in truth, and that alone transforms everything around them. You feel it when they enter the room. You feel it when they speak. You feel it when they look at you, seeing beyond the surface. And it's not because they are special, it's because they are awake. And the world, often half asleep, reacts with both confusion and relief. Deep down, everyone wants to remember who they are. Everyone wants to stop pretending. Everyone wants to know that living with more truth is possible. Those who vibrate at a high frequency are not better than others. They are simply more conscious. And consciousness is the beginning of all transformation. If this message resonated with you, if you felt its truth, I offer you a silent yet powerful invitation. Comment below, "My vibration reflects my truth." That's our symbolic password. Those who write it know. Those who read it feel it. As we come to the end of this journey through the wisdom of high vibrational living, I want to take a moment to thank you for being here. Your presence, your energy, and your openness are what make this space meaningful. May you continue to walk your path with consciousness, embracing both light and shadow. May you find the courage to stay whole, to honor your truth, and to transform everything around you through your presence. The world needs more people who are awake, who bring authenticity, and who inspire others to remember who they are. If this message resonated with you, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. Your support helps us continue to create content that matters, content that deepens our understanding of the self and the world. Together, we can keep spreading light, peace, and truth. Thank you again for being part of this journey. Stay true to yourself, stay centered, and always keep vibrating at your highest frequency. Until next time.